So what is it you wanted to call this episode again?
I wanted to call this, does Android Netrunner suck after 10 years?
So this is a 100% clickbait title.
I don't care.
10 years since Android Netrunner came out in 2012 at the time of this recording. And the funny thing is we were heavy into this game before we even started this podcast. And this game probably helped spawn the podcast because it gave us something to talk about.
Yeah, so blame Fantasy Flight FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, for this. 10 years later,
10 years.
They are responsible. They canceled Android Netrunner, and maybe we should have taken a clue from them. But I'm not saying we should have. I'm just saying.
Right. So what's interesting is I remember that when the show first started, we had this running thing where we had to mention Android Netrunner at least once per episode. Mm-hmm. And we kept that up for several months because we were playing so much. So you and I got into board gaming through card games, and we played so many different card games. And that was kind of during a period where we weren't really into a competitive card game at the time.
No.
And so we were kind of hungry for one. And I think literally within the first or second play of this game, both you and I were hooked.
It took us a little bit to get past. I mean, the rules we felt were very complicated. Coming off of Lord of the Rings, the collectors, the TCG collector's game, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so complicated. They're using terms.
Coming off Lord of the Rings from 8 years previous, we were probably about that time just finishing up our kind of obsession with the World of Warcraft CCG. Yeah. Which was a lot simpler too.
And it's the terms. Root. What are they talking about here? We had to relearn all of our terms, all of the definitions. And we're like, why can't they just call it a discard pile?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, this game is basically a 2-player only card game. It's set as like a cyberpunk type universe. So one person plays as like a hacker that they call a runner, and the other person plays as a corporation. And the whole goal of the game is that the corporation is trying to, they got agendas in place. They want to score some agendas. They got something they want to get done. Agendas are represented by cards. The hacker wants to get into their system and steal those agendas and keep them from getting them themselves. And basically the whole goal of the game is the first person to get a certain amount of agenda points, quote, will actually win the game. But both sides play totally different, which I think was one of the things that really drew us into it.
Yes. And I think from the standpoint of one of the keys that we always bring forward with the Lord of the Rings was the resource management on how to pay for cards. And I believe for me, Android Netrunner gave me that same similar feel that here I am. It's tight resources. I need to spend them. Even though you're not generating them for me like we would in Lord of the Rings, TCG, I had to generate it and only so many cards, or I had to waste turns doing that. And it was a very tight balance. I need to be able to do this. And something that we always enjoy is that bluffing mechanic, which we enjoyed in Lord of the Rings, which we didn't have in WoW. In my opinion,
I agree, which is, to me, I remember one that it's interesting because so many times over the past 10 years when we review a game and there's some sort of bluffing, lots of times you don't like that sort of thing. You don't like that hidden stuff, right?
No. You're thinking there's a difference between social bluffing, like, oh, can I read your face? Can I, that, oh yeah, the whole, that kind of stuff, versus playing cards, playing poker. That is part of the game. And it's not so much, I can usually figure out based on the information presented in front of me when you're playing a card game or something along that, versus a social deduction game where I simply have very little knowledge.
Okay. I see what you're saying. And what was really interesting is the way the game is designed. And by the way, this game, I believe Richard Garfield was the original designer in the 90s. And FFG got the game, the rights to it, and put it under their IP called Android, which was kind of like their cyberpunk thing. So when they got it and we learned how to play it, what was interesting was that the runners' cards were visible to the corporation. They saw everything. They saw there's this concept of building a rig. It's building out your hardware with these programs that you can use to try to attack the corporation's servers. But the corporation, most of their stuff is hidden, right? So they're playing cards face down on the table. And that's the bluffing mechanic you're talking about. When a runner wants to run into a server, they have no clue what type of traps or anything they're going to run into until they actually start doing it. So that's where the whole bluffing thing comes in, because you could have what I think is an agenda there, and it's actually a trap that if I actually get there, it hurts me instead.
Right. But I also think that the runner has some bluffing mechanism. Even when I try to run on you, how far am I really wanting? I may be wanting you to spend credits. I know I can but I had no intention of doing that. But I need you to deplete so that possibly I'm faking, I'm juking you. I'm going to go to that server versus going to one I really want to get to.
So I see what you're saying. And what you mean by, as a runner, you're making me decide, do I want to what's called res piece of ice? And ice is something that keeps the runner from getting to the server. But it costs me resources to do so. So you could run on a server with the intentions of making me spend all my resources, then jump to another server in your next action. And I no longer have the resources to protect myself from you going on that run over there.
Because maybe I read something in your face that says, hey, here he is putting down a card, and he looks up and quickly and is like, did you see me put that card down? There's no card here. There's no server here. Don't ignore this pile over here. You need to be concentrating where I've put all this ice on this ambush trap so that you know that you're going to die from meat damage. And we're using terms from the game, and I downloaded the rules recently, and I just forgot. I mean, we've been playing the skinny down version of the rules. I had forgotten just how much is in there based on all the expansions. Oh, heaven.
Yeah. So the reason why we're even talking about this is because we stopped playing Netrunner after, how many years do you think we're really involved? 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah. It was honestly, it was about the point where there were so many expansions come out. You and I couldn't keep up. For the longest time, we were in the competitive scene. In Charlotte, we would go to tournaments. Well, I mean, you laugh, but we would go to game stores and play in tournaments and pay to play. I mean, that's not something I did a lot of, and you didn't do a lot of either. And we were actually out there playing competitively when we could keep up with the card pool and the meta. But at some point in time, so many expansions came out that I personally just couldn't keep up with all the different type of deck builds anymore. And it came a little bit too much for me. And then you remember FFG started having some issues to where they started saying, all right, well, you can't use this card. And you can only have one copy of this card. And then it kind of became a jumbled mess, in my opinion.
Which we've encountered with other card games that we've played. So when you get to that, that's when you break us. That's when we back away and say, okay, if you had just left it alone, we know you want to bring people in and constantly keep it fresh. But we didn't need it to be fresh. But you're absolutely right. I felt competitive. I felt going into a tournament, I actually had a chance to win. And when I'd walk away with even a participation prize, I felt good, like a mat.
Well, because you and I knew the cards so well. When you play competitively in a game like that, and somebody plays a card and you don't have to read the text because you just know the cards, like, yeah, I know what that does. I know what that does. That's sort of, when you have that good feeling about a game, even though you may lose the game, you still feel really kind of good about what you did. And so we stopped playing. And then in 2018, Fantasy Flight Games announced that their partnership with Wizards of the Coast to license Netrunner had ended. So they were no longer going to sell any Netrunner merchandise. So it was done, over with. So I was actually catching up on this. In August and September of 2021, last year, Wizards of the Coast renewed the trademarks for both the physical and digital Netrunner goods and content. So everybody was getting excited. Oh my gosh, is Wizards going to res Netrunner and re-release it? But then earlier this year in February, Wizards filed a notice of abandonment for the trademark application. Like, okay, no, we're not going to do anything with it. So we thought it was kind of dead and done. However, Netrunner was so popular, there was a group of players out there that got together that wanted to keep the game alive. even so much as doing some print and play cards where they took text from the old Android Netrunner cards and redid them with some new art and everything, and started doing like a print on demand sort of system where people could still play the game. So a couple months ago, I had posted something about Netrunner, and one of the people from this company, Null Signal Games, which is the group that now kind of runs the resurrection of Netrunner, contacted me and said, "Hey, that's really cool that you like Netrunner. Did you know we have this over here? Would you guys be interested in checking out our starter decks?" Mm-hmm. And I asked you, and you went, "Yeah, sure,
of course." Absolutely.
So they sent them to us, and over the past 3 or 4 weeks, you and I have been trying to get together every week and re-experiencing Netrunner. Like you said, there was a steep learning curve, but kind of once we got over the learning curve, we were back into it.
Yes, we were back into it. We were enjoying it. We were feeling the excitement we got from dealing with the cards, seeing how we could outthink each other. You know, we're sitting here, oh, okay, I got Marty on the ropes. Oh, no, he just turned it on me. And it's fun going back to one of the games you love and seeing it in a new setting.
A new setting? It's the same setting.
I know, but what I'm saying is, for us, we are much older. We've experienced a lot more, so the setting is different for us. Instead of coming off of another card game, oh, here's another card game. You've been playing Lord of the Rings, Arkham Horror, those types of living card games. For me, I've kind of abandoned all that, except for Lord of the Rings. And it's just like, okay, well, we've been doing a lot of board games. So now it's kind of like taking the board games and moving to the card games and getting it back into that arena.
Yeah. Now, you and I did play Ashes for a little while. I think I'll probably play more than you. That was probably the last competitive game that I was into, and I really enjoyed it. But after revisiting Netrunner, I realized, crap, this was a really, really good game. And I think it was probably this game that got me to realize I like games with asymmetric gameplay, meaning where people have different actions and stuff that they do on their turn. And that's what's one of the learning curves with this game is the actions the runner takes and the number of actions they have on their turn is totally different than the actions that the corporation take. And so you literally have to learn how to play as the runner. Then you got to learn how to play as the corporation. And if you play this game, you have to build 2 separate decks. Because typically when you play, you'll play as one or the other and then swap and then play 2 games. Typically in tournament situations, you played 2 games.
Right. And I think that also was another reason why we stopped. It got to the point where we could not keep track of all the various metas out there that were going on that you needed to be prepared for. How could you defend? Or here comes this card, and you're like, oh, what does this do? And overwhelming. It became overwhelming, but the core game was solid. And I do wonder, though, if we had just stuck with core, going back to the thing where, keeping it fresh, would it have become stale? Because we even talked about that, having played a couple of these games, is like, all right, we're ready for more cards. But that's because we've played Android Netrunner. Do we want to bring in some of our favorite cards?
So I was actually looking up on Null Signal Games, and if you want to look in our show notes, I'll have a link to this website. They've been making expansions and everything over the past couple of years. Okay. Yeah, and what they sent us was, they had this organized really well. They sent us the starter, which was 1 runner deck, 1 corporation deck. And the way they have it set up, they said, all right, start here. Okay, here's your runner cards. Here is your corporation cards. All right, and then there's a card that says, stop, don't go any further. You don't need any other cards, just use these 2 decks. The extra cards that they sent us are now using for modifying and building your deck. So for like $50 or less, you can get a big stack of cards just to get started into the game. And it's a nonprofit organization. Basically, you're just paying what the cost is on print on demand. And all these people just love the game so much that they're just supporting it. The community supporting it by commissioning artists to make some art and working with play testers to test new types of cards and everything like that. And so every so often they'll release new cards, and they have several different formats, with one of them being you can only use the new cards that we make. Another one is kind of a legacy where you can use our cards plus any of the old Netrunner cards, which will probably be too overwhelming for me.
Oh, couldn't even keep right. I'm lucky I found my old cards, and it has already picked back up in our Charlotte area. We've got tournaments going on.
Yes, there was a Netrunner Facebook group that was very active 10 years ago, and it's kind of cranking back up again. And one of our local game stores is starting to have regular play. In fact, somebody in our Discord channel said, who was in Charlotte, said that he's getting back into it and playing regularly now. You talking about finding cards? Check this out. Hold on. So I found this binder right here. Hold on. It's a what? Like a 2-inch 3-ring binder.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Is it a blue binder?
It's black.
You disappoint me.
It should have been blue. But inside is the all my corporation cards. And by the way, it's Ultra Pro sheets. Even back then, 10 years ago, I was using Ultra Pro. And I have them color coded. You see the color tabs here based on the type of corporation, because there's a bunch of different type of corporations. And I was wanting to go back and find these because you and I are going to play Terminal Directive, which is like a legacy style game that Android Netrunner released several years ago, right?
In 2017, they released that, and it is you and the corporation. There has been a death, and whoever can figure out how this happened is going to win the game. But there are cards in the system that you do not get access to until you play them later, or until certain steps have been solved, or along those lines, things become unhidden to you. And they recommend you use one core set, which we can talk about why that's important, and then their base cards that they've included, and then they have other decks in there that you can use. But I have an issue.
Okay.
So I went on eBay looking for a core set, just a base core set. I still have mine, but I was kind of curious. And then I went on eBay and looking at Terminal Directive. That thing is selling for over $100.
Are you serious?
Some base Android sets are up. I don't know if they've closed. I didn't do, finalized.
Completed, yeah.
Completed. They were around $100. I'm like, this cannot be right. These are buy it nows. I'm like, who is paying this? Who would go out but if the Android Netrunner scene is ramping up, then maybe there are people who are wanting to do that. And I'm like, screw it. What's $100 to me? It's what?
Did you take the shrink off?
Oh yeah, I took it off back in 2017.
Oh, well, look, if you want to sell it for $100, it's $100. I'm okay with that.
That's one board game. That's one video game.
That's right. Did you find any core sets are on sale?
No, I couldn't get any core sets because I was looking for that one card that's missing in my core set. And I think,
So here's the thing. You said, what's the name of it? Terminal?
Toolbox.
Toolbox. It's called a toolbox. It's a terminal type card, I believe is what it is. You said, hey, did I let you borrow that? Because here's the problem with the original core set of Android Netrunner was that some cards you got 3 copies of, some you got 2, some you got 1. And of course, the best cards, one of them being Scorched Earth, everybody wanted 3 of those. So you'd have to buy 3 core sets in order to do that. Now, luckily, Fantasy Flight's gotten beyond that. They stopped doing that several years ago, but for many years, they had it where you had to buy multiple core sets to get everything. So I came home to look for Toolbox, and I immediately found this binder with all the corporation cards. I have no clue where my binder is with the runner, and I'm very frustrated. That day I came home after lunch, after you and I had lunch and we played, I was tearing the basement apart looking for what I believe is a white binder with all my runner cards, and I have no clue where it is, and I have no clue why that binder wasn't sitting beside this one on the shelf. So I'm kind of freaking out. I'm trying to no, because here's the thing. I want to play, so I need to find this, and if you can't get the core box anymore, I mean, that's fine. Thank you to Null Signal Games. I have, there's a new pool of cards that I could pull from. But I'm very frustrated, and now I'm going to tear the basement apart looking for what I assume is another binder down there with hundreds and hundreds of cards in it.
Because after thinking about it and meditating on it a little bit, you bought an additional core, I bought an additional core. And where you would get, we bought it so that we could share where we could split and have 3 of everything but the uniques. We would each have 2, and this way we could share other ones. There was some way that we did that to where, okay, now I have 4 of this. So somehow we were able to do it. I don't know, but I found a whole bunch of base cards just floating around the house.
Oh my gosh. I was literally sick to my stomach, and Vanessa was like, "What are you doing?" It's like, I don't know where this binder is. And I'm upset. It's like, there's no way I would have thrown this away. I would have not. I'm a pack rat. I don't throw anything away. I don't know whether I took, there's no way I would have taken all the cards out of the binder. No way. Not when I just don't. Okay. Anyway, I'm frustrated. I want to play Terminal Directive.
We will.
Because well, here, to answer the clickbait question, the title was, what, does an Android Netrunner suck after 10 years? It does not, because after us playing for several weeks, I was totally enjoying our games during lunch. Now, during lunch, we would just play one or the other, Corporation or Runner, and just play. That's another nice thing about these games. Things like Lord of the Rings and Arkham Horror take entirely too long now. We can easily play one game of Netrunner in probably 30 minutes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And even the last time that we played, I found my last time I had constructed decks. I found a pre-constructed Runner and Corporation, and we played those, and I'm like, oh, because those were what I consider finely tuned decks. And it was like, oh, I remember playing these things. That was fun finding that. I can find those pre-built decks and tokens that I bought years ago, but I can't find a binder with all the other cards in it.
So just while you were talking, I was going on eBay to see the completed auctions, and things aren't actually what they seem. People are posting them hoping to clickbait people into buying this. But I'm
like watching this video.
Exactly. $50 didn't sell. $50. So here's a core set. Here's a core set that sold for $45, you know? But some of the older packs, some of the older ones, that, you know, as Android Netrunner was dying out, are getting higher prices because those did not sell as well as the ones in the beginning. So therefore, getting one, like I'm looking here, and it was like Blood and Water data pack.
Okay.
That somebody bought that for $50. And I don't remember that data pack.
Yeah, well, again, you and I were out of it, and so we weren't collecting anymore. So that may have been one of the later ones.
Right. And there was in 2017, they also re-released Android Netrunner for a second edition.
I forgot about that. That's right. It was just the core set again. Now, I can't remember. Did they include 3 of everything?
I don't remember. I have no idea. But that was in 2017, the same time they released Terminal Directive.
Right. And then in 2018, they lost the ability to print any more Netrunner, and they just pulled the whole product line, which is a shame. And that's where, well, here's the thing is, I guess with this Null Signal Games, you can go out and buy their starter decks and everything and start fresh from there without buying any of the old stuff. Right.
Now, did Null Signal Games have all the cards from the core set? I don't think they do.
I don't think so. I'm not sure how they decided what went in those starter decks and those initial expansions. Some of them are new cards. Some of them are reprints of the cards they used to have. And I guess they pick and choose to try to keep it fair and balanced. So they don't, create like where something needs to be nerfed. I think there's enough in the community saying, okay, don't include this card because this could cause problems down the road with something else.
So does it suck after 10 years? It sucks in the standpoint that it may suck me back in.
I know. I was honestly not expecting this. And then all these memories started coming back. I was telling you when we played the deck that you were playing, that Corporation deck that I gave you, was somewhat of this really wild combo deck that I had. I remember playing in a tournament one time, and it was one of these things where if I got the right cards in play, it was an instant win for me. And it was crazy how I had to pull it off. I had to get certain cards into play this card where I would discard my entire draw deck, have another card where I could go through my discard pile to pull out cards to go back into my draw pile, be able to draw those cards in my hand. And then with those cards, I was able to deal enough damage to the runner in order to kill him. Because what? And by the way, I did that a couple times, and people got so mad at this deck.
Well, they should.
They hated it. In fact, sometimes I would say it's getting ready to happen, and they're just like, well, just stop. Don't even do it, because I know what you're getting ready to do. And after that, I said, okay, I'm tearing the deck apart. I said, people aren't having fun playing against this. It was clever. It was cute how you could pull it off, but I stopped using it. Regardless, all those memories are coming back of playing and building these really cool decks and combos. And one thing I really appreciated too was talking about dealing enough damage to you. Each side had different ways to win. Where if the one way the runner could lose is if the corporation did either net, brain, or some meat damage to where the runner has to discard cards from their hand. If they're ever told to discard a card and they have nothing in their hand, they immediately lose. One way for the corporation to lose is at the beginning of every turn, they have to always draw a card. If they ever go to draw a card from their draw deck and the draw deck doesn't exist, they lose. So it's these really clever different ways that both could win. And you could build decks to mill the corporation's deck to get them to lose. Likewise, the corporation could build decks to do just tons of damage to the runner in order to try to kill them that way.
And I think, going over that, and I think one of the other aspects that I enjoyed is when you were going into that deck, there was always the ability, well, almost always the ability, depends on the card. I like the aspect where you could pull a card from the corporation and then pay to destroy it. We didn't have that in other, games so much. So I found that to be very entertaining at times, to I want to wait. Once again, you pull that card, that's that bluffing. No, I'm not going to deal with that, and it's like, and the corporation's like, oh, great. It's going to be another piece of ice I don't need. Or, oh, my heavens, I should have trashed it, but I don't have the credits. You were always constantly having to make hard decisions on both sides of this.
And what was so clever? We talked about a lot of people that said the barrier to this game is the nomenclature or the terms, which I totally agree. There's no such thing as a draw deck or a discard pile. There's a grip and an HQ. There's an archive and there's a stack. There's a heap. All these are reference to things that you commonly understand as your hand, your draw pile, your discard pile. And I thought we'll never be able to remember all this, but you do, because that's how the cards reference everything. So when I run on your HQ, what that means is I'm trying to access a card from your hand. If I get to your hand, I can blindly draw a card. And if it's an agenda, I get it. If it's something I could trash, I could do that too. Or if I run on your R&D, that's just, if I get to it, I get to draw a card off the top of your deck. Or you can also run on a person's discard pile, their archives. And as a corporation, you got to protect all of them.
You got to make sure that everything's, you don't want people to data breach you. That's just a PR nightmare.
Oh, bad publicity.
There you go.
See, there's all these weird, you could give like the corporation bad publicity. Then there's this whole concept of doing traces of the corporation on the runner where you could tag them. There was a lot to this game and I remember the first couple times you and I played, we were slowly going through the rules, and eventually with anything, it becomes second nature. And it's one of those things that when we dug this game out again, after so many years of not playing, it's like, whoa, I don't remember any of this. But as we got more familiar with it, it's like, okay, yeah, I remember how to do a trace. He's going to do a trace on me. Let's do it. Here's my link strength. We're going to blind bid and see who wins the trace.
And then when you did it, when we had to do it the other day, I'm like, wait, what? Blind bid? I got to do what? Okay, fine. And I had the upgraded tokens still. I couldn't find everything, but I could find upgraded tokens. I can't find my normal tokens. I got probably 3 boxes of that. I'm like, geez, that's unreal. The game is a lot of fun for us card players from that standpoint, because I think it's a chess match and we enjoy that. And that's really what it breaks down for me, is a chess match to see how well I can bluff my way to force you to do things you don't want to do. And did I build a deck strong enough to be able to handle any situation that either you as the runner throw at me, or I throw at you as a run? Did I have enough to break through your ice and deal with that? So that's why it brings back so many fond memories. It's just those challenges. And somewhere in this house, there are 2 play mats that have all the terms laid out on them somewhere.
So I
did you find that?
No, it's a mat you printed out, right? Because I have a picture on Facebook of this big mat that you printed out on one of your large printers at work.
Oh.
Okay. That was early on. It was a picture from your local game store when they used to be at a place in Matthews that we played. And there's a picture of us learning the game with these big paper mats that you printed out. But I think we bought neoprene mats, right?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, didn't we have neoprene? I'm pretty sure. I'm going to have to go see and find it. I'm finding maps from games that have been defunct. This one game that we saw at Gen Con one time that's gone. I got that mat. And then somewhere, I did find a 2014 tournament map. I have that sitting somewhere. I did find that one the other day. I used it to secure a rug in the house because the neoprene sticks to the hardwood floors. The grip.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you're ruining your mat.
It was only for a few days. No big deal.
Oh, okay. Okay. So here's the thing. After 10 years, this is still probably one of the best competitive card games I've ever played. Because in that time, I've played a lot of other competitive card games. I've tried, I think, every one that FFG released since then, like Legend of the Five Rings, etc. We played Ashes. We played like Doomtown. We've played a lot of different competitive before and after Netrunner. After revisiting it, it's still one of the best competitive, two-player competitive card games I've ever played.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of the easiest for me to pick up and remember how to play it and want to go deck build.
I know. Thing is, though, I'm wondering, I guess it's interesting. And now we have these options. We got these existing cards that we have, but it'd also be fun, too, to maybe buy another set of the starter decks in that bundle from Null Signal Games. And each of us have one and try to build with just some of the new cards. Because there's plenty of cards in there to build something too. And again, that's not too expensive to do. So I'm in. When you said, nice thing about Terminal Directive as a legacy game, it gives us a reason to play. It's just kind of like, all right, let's just build a deck and just monkey around with it and kind of slowly get back into it. And after that, if we still want to continue playing, then we know it's like, well, okay, I've got a pool of cards here. We can just build a deck and get together for lunch like we've been doing and play every so often.
Yeah, because some of them are still tournament legal, so we could still bring those in from Terminal Directive. I did not know that until I was reading the rules. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, that's kind of interesting.
Well, here's the thing: will you go to any competitive stuff here in Charlotte?
No, good God, no.
I'm either.
No.
Yeah, I'm not that invested because I still think some people here are super, super really into it, which is great. I'm glad there's a community that's still thriving playing this game. But I'm not at that level anymore. A casual game here and there is what would make me happy, not the competitive stuff, because I remember I used to obsess over decks and building decks and tweaking decks, and I just don't have the mental capacity for that anymore.
I will say I would, if a schedule opened up to be able to do this, I would do it just for the fun of it, to see the atmosphere again. You know? And see what the participation trophy is.
Okay, I'm 0-4. Thanks for playing. It's
Appreciate it. Okay, you want me to walk out now? Here we go. Who wants a piece of this? Everybody does.
Heck, I used to just go to just so I can get free promo cards and stuff like that. Because last time the participation was a token or a free promo card or something like that.
So in that binder, do you have your Scorched Earth promo cards?
Hold on. Let me see.
You should. There should be 3 of them.
I have a section in the back here of a bunch of, I believe, are tournament style cards. Oh, you mean stuff like this? This works really well on a podcast, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You mean stuff like that, where it's like full art cards?
Yeah. So the Scorched Earth promo cards, the first time that they came out with them, they were a different size, so you had to put everything in sleeves.
Yep. And for some reason, I have a lot of these.
Oh, we were getting them constantly.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I have a ton of these. I got another one too. It's
yeah, that I remember. Is that Scorched Earth also? It looks like they're on a moon.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was the second. So that was the card for beating the runner to create a whole bunch of damage. But you had to wait for the next pack to come out, and then there were strategies around that. So you had to deal with it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and then every runner had a certain like faction they were with, and they were different. Every corporation played totally different, and then you could splash in cards, some other stuff. There was a point value on the corporation or identity of the runner that says how many points you could splash in from other things. It was even deck building was really well laid out in this game too.
Mm-hmm. There was a database. Oh, there were all kinds of stuff on the webs that you could go in. There was a site that you could go and start building it, and it would make sure it would calculate, okay, you can bring in this amount of cards because from another faction you had certain limits that you could only use, and the of course corporation had to have X amount of agendas in its hand based on card size, and you always were at the minimums on that because you didn't want to give the runner the chance to just mill out a whole bunch of agendas and win the game. A lot of interesting. I don't think I ever read the agendas when you scored them because that was all flavor text.
We was playing the other day. I ended up winning, and I think most of them I got by running on your draw deck or your R&D, and I just got lucky and pulled the top card, and then I would win. I was like, oh, I got lucky, and you're like, that's Netrunner. I mean, it's like, you think, well, I could have protected that better with more ice in front of it, so you couldn't get to it, but you didn't, and so.
What you're saying there.
And what's really cool is during that game is you had this one card that had a bunch of cards in front of it to protect it, and then another one that had hardly any, and that's part of the bluffing. It's like. Mm-hmm. Did he put the agenda behind the one that doesn't have a lot of stuff thinking that I wouldn't run there? And there's something bad in the one with all the stuff that I would run through. You play all these really cool mind games.
Mm-hmm. But you give it away. So that's what I was mentioning at the beginning of this is there's that game of, come on, run on this because you think there's a lot there, but there's something special waiting for you. Oh, look. And one of the other things is, you could always discard something that you've never rezzed or flipped over and put it in your discard pile. And they're like, well, did he just discard an agenda? Because you could do that. You could get rid of the ways because you know what's in your deck. And there were all these other strategies that you could play. There were just strategies all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
So no, it does not suck.
It does not suck after 10 years. And in fact, I am like trying to find my runner cards. I'm ready to build a deck, play this terminal directive stuff, and just kind of get back into it. It is a solid game. This game was designed by, like I said, it was originally Richard Garfield, and then Lucas Litzinger was the one from Fantasy Flight who worked on it. And he left and went to Wizards, and the idea was that he was going to resurrect Netrunner there, but nothing ever happened. But he's done a lot of good stuff. He did Star Wars Destiny, which was the dice game that I played for a bit. So they just did a fantastic job on this. 10 years later, I think this game is I don't think it's lost anything for me. It's the things that I liked 10 years ago, I still like to this day. And now I want to play some more. So I don't know whether the clickbait title worked or not. He's shaking his head no, but no way. This game does not suck after 10 years. And thanks to Null Signal Games, there's plenty of life left in it.